Hey everybody, David here, and today I actually want to talk about a list that I made. Recently I watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it got me thinking, what movies would I really recommend to people that have maybe younger audiences that have not seen some movies that I really enjoy. So these are movies, this is not my top 10 of all time, although some of these would probably make it into my top 10, a lot of these. But I really wanted to make a list, if I could recommend 10 movies for a younger audience, like maybe the teenage or younger audience that have never seen much movies but want to get into them and want to know where to start, what are some films that I could recommend to them to check out? Some of the classics or even more modern classics. I have a few here that are a little bit more modern, but a lot of them are from the 80s and 90s. And I hope that if anyone out there is looking for a starting point on, what movies to get into, that could help you modernize yourself or something. I don't know. These are movies that I would totally recommend to put on your list of most anticipated films of the past or whatever. Because it's not only the modern movies that matter. Sometimes we have to look at some of the movies that came before and remember them, because they've all helped contribute it to what cinema is today. And some of them are even better than a lot of the ones that are here today, So here's my list. I'm going to start. This is in no particular order. This is not a best to worst list. This is just a list of some really good movies that I'd recommend. So here we go. The first one I'll have here is The Lion King. I think if you are someone that wants to start off somewhere in animation, I think you have to watch The Lion King at some point in your life. The Lion King is a classic. They are even remaking it along with all these other live-action Disney remakes. But maybe just like Beauty and the Beast this year, I enjoyed the new Beauty and the Beast remake, but I still contend that the original Beauty and the Beast animated film from 1991 is still the better film. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same with The Lion King. Even though I love what Jon Favreau did with the Jungle Book, I think the animated Jungle Book was kind of dated. The Lion King is not dated. It is still a movie that can still hold up, aside from the fact that it's hand-drawn animation. But I don't know why that should date it. I still think the animation in that movie is still gorgeous to watch. And it is out on Blu-ray right now, so you might even want to go and check that movie out. The next movie on my list I have here is the Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park. I'm not talking about Jurassic World with Chris Pratt, which is a fine movie on its own. It's a good, entertaining film. But Jurassic Park is the one you should be watching. It's the best one. And usually I'm someone that loves sequels, sometimes more than the original, but this one is one that I have to agree with everybody that the original is the best one. It's Spielberg, directed by Steven Spielberg, who did go on to direct The Lost World, Jurassic Park, which I actually really enjoy as well. I know a lot of people don't care too much for that one, but this one is the more important of the franchise, and you can even ignore the other ones if you want after that. Check out this one. Do yourself a favor, and maybe even read the novel that the movie is based off of, because I read the novel. It's like one of the last novels I ever read, and even I admit I really enjoyed the novel, but I think Spielberg made the movie stand on its own while borrowing a few things from and ideas from the novel, that it's a worthy movie even without the book. Next, I have Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, this one was a tough one for me. I really wanted to put the whole trilogy, and I'm going to warn you guys now, I do have a couple of trilogies on this list. But with Indiana Jones, I think if you are going to watch one, pick Raiders of the Lost Ark. I hope you guys enjoy Raiders of the Lost Ark enough to go check out Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade. If you want to see Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that's your choice. But most people, I'm warning you now, do not like that one. I think it's all right. But yeah, it is the weakest of the bunch. But yes, you have to definitely check out Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the best action adventure films of all time. I also have Back to the Future on my list. This is a classic for many people of my generation that grew up in the 80s and 90s. Back to the Future, the original film, is such a great comedy. Everything in this movie just holds up story-wise. The characters are so enjoyable. Marty McFly, played by Canadian actor Michael J. Fox, and Christopher Lloyd, who plays Doc Brown in the movie, have such great chemistry together. They're a great dynamic duo. This is a movie you cannot skip out on. It definitely is a timeless film that doesn't even feel like it aged a day. The next one on my list, I reviewed it yesterday, is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like I said yesterday, I'm not going to go into full detail on why I like the movie, but I will say it is the best live action and animation hybrid film that you'll ever see. You know, Space Jam, that's a fun little movie. Casper, there was a movie in 1995, Casper, which was based off Casper, the Friendly Ghost. Comes up maybe around Halloween time all the time. That one is probably the movie that comes the closest to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the best one. It is the one that doesn't dumb down anything. It really sets its eyes to an adult audience, but at the same time, it's good enough for kids as well. I think there's a lot of jokes that will go over kids' heads, but it's really a different experience if you watch it when you're older with a more adult mind, because there are some inside jokes that I think you'll appreciate more if you're older. The next one I have here is the original Ghostbusters. You can't leave this one off the list. Ghostbusters is such a great movie. Now, I know we had the new Ghostbusters movie last year with the women. I thought that one was alright. I didn't think it was that bad. I actually liked it more than Ghostbusters 2, which Ghostbusters 2 feels really dated. And a lot of the jokes fall flat in that movie, where I feel some of the jokes in the new one actually did a lot better, but nothing will come close to the original 1984 Ghostbusters film. It's just such a classic on every level. The jokes still hit good. There are a lot of great jokes in this movie. And Bill Murray is at his best, I think, or at least one of his best performances, definitely. And it blends that comedy with the creepiness really well. So see, I got you guys a horror movie, kind of. The next 4 movies I have here are trilogies, the first one being the Toy Story Trilogy. This is very similar to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or at least the first Toy Story movie is. I think the original Toy Story is a little overrated. I enjoy it still, but I don't think it holds up as well as most people think it does. That's just my opinion. But I will admit it still is a really enjoyable movie. I actually think Toy Story 2 and 3 take it to the next level. Specifically Toy Story 3, which, remember, got nominated for an Academy Award for not just Best Animated Picture and won that category, but it was also nominated for Best Picture, you know, alongside a lot of other live-action dramatic films. Not too many animated films can say they did that. There's only 3 in history. Beauty and the Beast back in 1991, Up in 2009, and then you got Toy Story 3 in 2010. The Toy Story trilogy is definitely a trilogy that you should check and look at it as a whole complete film, even though each individual film stands on their own really well. The next one on my list, I have the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm putting this one because I think it is the greatest superhero trilogy of all time, and The Dark Knight is definitely the best single superhero movie of all time to me. It was kind of hard for me to not add any of the MCU films, but if I am going to add one superhero film to represent all superhero films, it's definitely the Dark Knight trilogy. And it's a great combination of a beginning, a middle, and an end. When you watch The Dark Knight Rises, it feels like everything is coming full circle. Despite what the fact that some people think Dark Knight Rises is the worst of the bunch, I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's a great ending to a great trilogy. Another trilogy on my list I have here is The Lord of the Rings. Again, just like Toy Story and and The Dark Knight. I couldn't just pick one. And with Lord of the Rings, you really do need all three because it does feel like a complete set, just like the Dark Knight trilogy. Except this one really is a continuing story. Like, if you watch The Two Towers, which is my favorite, The Two Towers is said to be the weakest because it's just the middle of the story. Nothing really progresses story-wise. It's just, okay, here's the meat of the movie, the action stuff, the big action stuff. Even though the big action stuff also comes in Return of the King as well. But Return of the King is the ending that comes full circle. Fellowship of the Ring really sets up the whole story and gets the characters on their journey. And so with that, I felt like the whole trilogy should have been represented here on my list. And you know what? Remember, this trilogy it was nominated for so many Academy Awards, including Best Picture. That's right, all three of these films were nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And lots of people say, oh, why don't these fantasy and superhero and sci-fi movies ever get nominated for Best Picture? People forget about The Lord of the Rings sometimes, it seems like. All three of these movies, these fantasy films, were nominated in those categories, and many, many more. Remember, Return of the King was nominated for 11 Academy Awards that year. So obviously this trilogy did something right, and I totally recommend you guys to check it out. You can ignore The Hobbit if you want. The Hobbit does have its pacing issues, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy might have some pacing issues once in a while. But thankfully, you don't have to watch the extended versions. You can watch the regular theatrical versions. They're a little bit shorter, and they get to the point, and I guess that is the point. Finally, I can't leave off this trilogy off my list. The original Star Wars trilogy. Don't worry about The Force Awakens, even though The Force Awakens is good. I enjoy it. And The Last Jedi looks like it's going to be amazing. You can ignore the prequels anytime you want. But if you do want to watch them all, people always say, where should I start? Should I start with the prequels or should I start with the originals? Start with the originals. If you enjoy what you see in the original films, then you could go back and watch the prequels if you want. And I'm someone that likes the prequels, but I'm telling you, start with the originals. Those are the ones that got people excited about Star Wars in the first place. Why would you go back and watch the trilogy that is least likely to entertain you? Because even Star Wars fans themselves will say it's some of the worst in Star Wars. At least it's not as bad as the Christmas special that they did in 1978. So with that being said, guys, these are the movies that I would recommend to anybody that wants to check out movies. Tell me, are there any movies that you think I should have added to this list? There were a lot of movies that I was thinking of that I wanted to add, but I only wanted to bring 10 into the fold. I kind of cheated with some trilogies, complete trilogies, but what can I say? I couldn't leave some movies off in those group of films. But with that being said, I did have some single ones here. Hopefully this is useful to people who are getting into films and wants to check out as many as they can. These are some films that I think are worthy of checking out for any generation coming down the line and becoming a fan of movies like I was, or like I am. And with that being said, I'm ending this here. Please like, subscribe, and until next time, guys and girls, take care.